I'm here today with Brett Stern, founder of Beer Chips and fellow Mets fan. Thank you very much. And Brett and I first met in Active Space, which is an office building here in Portland, Oregon that has a lot of small, quirky, and innovative businesses and other fun, crazy people. Welcome to the Change Agency Unite series.
Thank you.
All right, so we want to really kind of engage in a little conversation here, kind of in keeping with our Change Agents series, but I know traditionally you thought of yourself as an innovator. To you, what is the difference between a change agent and an innovator?
I think innovation is all about finding an alternative methodology to sell something. It's all about the commercialization of the idea.
Right.
And so that's after you've figured out what the change is. I am an industrial designer, so that's what I call myself, because no one really knows what an industrial designer is, so I get to make that up or change that definition. An industrial designer is someone who designs a mass-produced consumer product, and so that's what I do. I've made my living designing as a consultant for larger companies and individuals, and with this current project, Beer Chips, was more about doing something entrepreneurial. We're putting the product out on the market myself, mostly to have control of the product. And so I think as an industrial designer, you are a change agent. People come to you to figure out change and alternative methodologies and be innovative and understand technology and understand the marketplace. And so I think the changing part is what I'm doing as an industrial designer. The innovation part is what I do as an entrepreneur, which is the commercialization of that change.
And what I love about your background is just kind of the varied things that you've been exposed to and engaged in. And I think that really helps, I think, maybe unlock the mind in terms of creativity. Can you talk a little bit about being an author, being doing pottery, doing a lot of different things?
As a kid, I was happy inventing things, building, and riding my bicycle. And so I somehow found a vocation that did all those things. And I have a degree in industrial design, though I also have a background in ceramics and in certain crafts. When I got out of school, I tried getting a job, moved back to New York City, where I'm from, and actually never could get a job in all these years. And so I kept on just trying to find ways to make a living and saying yes to projects. And I think people appreciated the enthusiasm to take that risk, to embrace that risk, and do something, because they were asking me, they didn't know who else to call to do something because it was something new. There was never really a title for the project they were trying to do. So after a while, you do these things and you get confidence in yourself, which is a big deal, and you have an ego to have that confidence in yourself. And after a while, you realize that you have a certain skill set, and mine is particularly that I understand materials and processes, and I'm hands-on with materials and processes. Materials being glass, wood, plastic, whatever it is, and the way to process them, to manipulate them, to manufacture with them. Certainly those are skills of an industrial designer. And my approach was also being hands-on, because part of it being an industrial designer is being a model maker and experimenting with materials, but a little more hands-on than most industrial designers. And so I became also this craftsperson. And then being in New York City allowed me, people would come to me and say, hey, can you build this great thing for us? We want something fabulous or extravagant. And I was always willing to say yes, because I felt I could understand the technology, I could understand the materials, I understood how to source something out, and then I was willing to try the project. And after a while, you don't really fail, you just make a lot of mistakes and you learn from those mistakes. And if you're able to complete projects, generally on budget, people will keep hiring you to do these new things, and after a while, you get known as the guy to call to do different alternative things and excited and enthusiastic about doing new things.
And how did you get the idea for Beer Chips? Where did that come in terms of your history and where you were?
Well, I had tried a number of entrepreneurial projects in the past, and I would like to say they were all technological successes but marketing failures, meaning that the ideas worked, the invention worked, the technology worked, but the ability to commercialize, to bring it to market, failed. So I had an opportunity to take a sabbatical, which turned out for about 2-3 years. I was invited to a university outside of New York sort of in the wilderness. And after 20 years of being this consultant and understanding what went wrong, what went right, and one of the problems was, I think as an individual, when you bring something out technologically, you need a great deal of money. And so that was a big thing. And when you bring out something technological, you're changing the marketplace. There's a paradigm change, and that's very difficult to get people. People say they want new things, but society doesn't necessarily want new things. People don't really like change. I then had read a book by Thomas Friedman called The World is Flat, and he was talking about innovation, about intellectual property, about outsourcing, about creativity. The world is flat. And so those things were sort of going on in my head. Over the years, I had an interest in processed food, and processed food is not an apple, or it's not a banana, it's not something just growing, it's processed. And I always felt that was a great opportunity for industrial designers because it's raw material, you're processing them, you're putting them in a box, you're putting them on a shelf, someone's buying it, there's commercialization, there's exchange of money. Perfect opportunity for industrial design, but no one had done it. So those things are always sort of floating around. So the world is flat, manufactured foods, having a product that doesn't necessarily have a lot of technology, low-cost introduction. These things were floating around in my head. I didn't wake up one day saying, oh, I want to do beer chips or anything like that. A lot of times you just have to be open to these opportunities. My opportunity was, I was watching the Food Channel, a show called Unwrapped, where they make products, show how they go into the factory and make cookies or crackers. This show was making potato chips, and they showed a video on how they make potato chips in 30 seconds. Truck puts them out, cooked in oil, comes out the other end. And my fascination with materials and processes, in 30 seconds I understood how to make potato chips. And at the end of the video they showed this is how they put the spice on. The guy says, we have 12 different flavors, and I said to myself, just as a quick exercise, I could think of a flavor. And these are things you do as a designer. You do a 1-minute sketch or a 5-minute sketch. So these are instead of running 5 miles, I think of ideas, I think of variations. And so I was there watching the TV. I knew how to make potato chips. My goal was to think of a new potato chip. And that's what I was doing at the moment. I did have a beer in my hand. I took a sip of beer and I said, beer flavored chips, beer chips. And then what I always do, and I think a lot of people do, it's like beerchips.com. And so and it's like, wow, what a great name. And so I went to my computer and I went online and went to see if the domain was available, and it was. And so I got the domain just as a party trick. So that's all it was. It was, for $10 I could have beerchips.com, not knowing anymore, but it sounded great. And then I went to the USPTO, the Patent Trademark Office, and this is all within a series of 15 minutes. Saw that the name Beer Chips was available as a trademark and got that, and that was a few $100s more. And then sat back and realized that I owned this project. I didn't know what it was, but I owned the intellectual property, and that's what it's all about in my field, in a lot of fields, of owning the IP. How do you control something? How do you have control of an idea? It's so cloudy sometimes, but here I own the domain, I own the trademark for it. And then I said, well, what are beer chips? Well, they're potato chips made with beer. And it's like, okay, well, how could I put beer into potato chips? And my feeling was, my career prior to that, was designing surgical instruments and heart valves, and it's like, that is difficult to design a surgical instrument for heart surgery. Figuring out beer into potato chips can't really be that difficult. And I saw how chips were made. Next morning I woke up and started the process, and it was just sort of done as an exercise. Again, I had this free time on this sabbatical, so I had free time to explore and do these exercises, which it was to begin with. And then the more I grew it, I started stepping back, and my process always has, you really need to define the problem before you really go into it. And though I had the solution, so it was somewhat backwards, the solution being beer chips, what was the problem? And I started looking at, well, who would eat beer chips? Well, guys will eat beer chips, adults will eat beer chips. And when are you going to be eating beer chips? When you're drinking beer, when you're watching the game, when you're playing football, whatever it is. And then these terms popped into my head, adult snack foods. That's what I was designing. And then there was clarity with the whole project, because now I can go forward. of designing the whole thing, of branding it, of designing the product. Everything involved was creating adult snack foods. It opened up other flavors. So then I had Bloody Mary, I had margarita. Who was my consumer? You know, who is like the classic person who's going to go to the store and buy this? It all was in front of me. And these are tools I do as an industrial designer. So the actual execution was fairly obvious to me at that point, because this is what I do for a living, is take the idea, whether it's my idea or a customer's idea, and just sort of look at it in an exploded view, all the steps that may be involved in it.
What I love about, I mean, there's the power of the idea that you had, and you know, kind of the focus in on the problem you're solving in terms of the market and the marketing. But you know, to me, is so compelling, and what Beer Chips represented was the process of commercializing it. You know, kind of that nimble model of you with the idea and the marketing, working with kind of the manufacturer of the chip, and then turning around and distributing it through the distribution networks. And in essence, it was a virtual company.
One of the things, again, going back to World is Flat, is how can I outsource stuff and what should I outsource? And I came up with this idea that I would outsource everything except the creativity. And looking back, I would see that companies, the first thing they would do is outsource the creativity. They would hire me to figure out their ideas. They would say, do something new. Our competition does this, give us a different color or make it smaller, bigger. And so they really had no passion or idea about what the product was, or really what they were trying to put out there. And so it was very important for me to have control of this. And so I did all the creativity about it, the branding, the packaging, the copy, the flavor profile, sourcing, all that I did. And then the idea was to outsource the stuff that, in a sense, could be commoditized, the manufacturing, the distribution, the literally putting in a truck, the logistics. And so I went out into the marketplace and found existing resources, manufacturers, co-packers, distributors, brokers, whatever it is, that's all they do. So I just had to put my variable into their process. And so I had no tooling up front. I didn't have no capital expenditures. I had no factory. I had no equipment. Everything was made on demand. So that was the thrill of it, was actually designing the business model, putting the product into the business model, and showing that it worked. And so the whole process worked off a laptop computer. Anywhere, wherever I had a Wi-Fi connection, I was running this business. And so orders came in, orders went out. Things just moved around, literally using QuickBooks to run the company right now.
So do you think, so this model of, you know, kind of owning the idea of being a creator, but then outsourcing other aspects, do you think this is kind of the future of how the global economy is going to have to?
I think for a lot of projects you could do that. I think for smaller entrepreneurial companies it works. I think once you get very technological, it's difficult to do that because you want to have control of the manufacturing. But on a number of industries you could definitely do this. I think for small startups it's definitely a way to get yourself into the marketplace. I think once you get bigger, then you want to control some of the manufacturing if that is possible. But I think it's definitely a segment that can grow. Yeah.
And it's kind of blowing wide open the notion of what it means to, you know, create a company, commercialize idea, you know, collaborate with different partners. It's this new relationship.
Well, a lot of times you need that skill set, but you don't need it all the time. So if I need a marketing person or a designer or whatever, I don't need them all day, 24/7, or even as a full-time employee. And I think we're all realizing that, you know, we could come in sort of as a hired gun, and I mean, that's what I've done for a living. So I think the opportunity, because we become so virtual now, is that you can find people and resources and skill sets to use for a very specific task that you know. And I think the job of the head person, the head entrepreneur, is to understand how to not use people, but how to get people fit into that situation and apply their knowledge and use it to the most efficient process. I think it's very important to understand and define the deliverables before you start what you're getting. You can't just say, oh, he's a creative person, he's an engineer, let him tell me what I want. You need to still know what you want out of that process. And by doing that, you control your costs.
And now looking back at the Beer Chips experience, is there anything that sticks out as something you might have done differently? given that?
Well, everyone should know that I have sold the
Yeah.
business, which was the goal from day one, was to put the product, the company on the market. It was virtual, so I did sell it about 2 months ago. Very glad about that. And what did I learn from that? I think the process, this virtual company controlling the IP, is the way to go. Being an entrepreneur is certainly challenging in the marketplace right now, and the biggest thing is just having access to capital is certainly a challenge right now. What I liked about the process was that I had control of the product, and that was very important to me as a product designer. I'm infatuated by the product, and so that's either a good thing or a bad thing, and sometimes I make decisions to just control things that may not be a benefit, so I have to learn to modify that possibly.
So what's next now that you've sold your chips?
Resting a bit, riding my bicycle a bit. There are projects on my head. There is one big one that is technological that I'm trying to figure out how to get involvement from existing industry players right now. I always enjoyed being the consultant for the company. This way it gave me the ability to work on a variety of different venues, and as you mentioned in my work, it's been so varied. That's what I really like to do. And I am not going to do, well, in fact, legally, I can't do another snack food for a while. But I do like processed food. I do like that venue. But I think I may try to go back to my consulting work, because I think what I offer now is that understanding of entrepreneurism and how to behave that way. And I could bring not just the design element to the company, but the idea of innovation, which is finding alternative methodologies, how to sell something and commercialize. And it's not all about social networking, it's about the product and about dealing with finances in different ways and controlling the intellectual property.
Okay. And in terms of opportunities, future opportunities that you see out there, I know that you recently updated the brettstern.com website. I love that. It's when I go there, it kind of gives me some ideas of about ways to kind of expand my own mind based on some of your experiences. Right. But what do you think are some more maybe based on your experiences, what do you think are some future opportunities that people can take advantage of coming?
I think projects that I would like to work on, and also opportunities, the idea which is going around about mass customization. So the idea of just making one product that fits all, like one car, you get it in black, doesn't really work anymore. So, and there's technologies out there where you could almost customize every product for every consumer. That's a venue that I think I'd like to explore. And what specific product? The product is not as important to me. It's the process which is important to me. So this idea of mass customization. Then on the other side, I'm talking to some people who are more sort of artisan craftsmen people, a little more hands-on, where it's the idea to help them mass produce but unlimited quantities, to actually make the same thing over and over again, but in terms of making 20 or 100 of something, which is not really mass produced. It's just, so one end is mass customization, and then the other side is limited production. Completely separate ideas, but I'd like to work on projects. And I like working to extremes on projects, to work on something like that and something like that.
I want to go back real quick to something you mentioned earlier about change. And frequently, people are afraid of change. But as a change agent, how do you embrace that reality, or how do you affect positive change in terms of solving problems?
I think, fortunately or unfortunately, to affect change is you have to be the bull in the room. You just have to force it. You need to have a baseball bat and just beat your way through the process. Certain people like change. More people don't like change. And there's two quotes. And the first one is, "New things are not trusted unless proven by experience." Machiavelli said that in 1513. And the other, 500 years later, by John Maynard Keynes, which is, toughest thing, and I'm paraphrasing, toughest thing is not getting people to accept new ideas, but to give up old ideas. So human nature is people don't like change. That's what it is. We certainly have some people who want to be the first to buy an iPad or whatever it may be, but I nature of change is difficult sometimes. I think you need a strong ego. I think you need a strong personality, and I think you have to have a strong product, whether it's an actual product or a virtual idea, whatever it is. You have to have a good idea, and you have to justify that within it. You just can't say, oh, I like this, and that's what I want to do. It has to be commercial if that's what your goal is, and it doesn't have to be commercial. If you want to be an artist and say, my painting, I'm in my blue period, that's fine. I think you just have to have a very strong ego and just being very focused and understanding why people make decisions. A lot of people make decisions based on greed and fear. Greed that they want more money, fear that they're not going to make it. And so you have to sometimes put it in terms of those nuances there. This is how you're going to benefit from this change. This is how you're going to make more money. This is how the marketplace will respond in a positive way. This is the niche I'm going into. You have to really always focus into the niche that you're going. It's all about the commercialization. And I'm not always about just selling more stuff for the sake of selling more stuff. And in fact, I try to limit what that is. If there's something good about it, then the marketplace wants to know it and will embrace it.
And what do you think about sustainability and its relationship to them as, exclusive or completely tied together?
I tell you, sustainability is a conundrum. I'm a product designer. I manufacture, produce things. Whether it's me making it myself or putting it in the marketplace, I'm still making things, and I have a problem with that. The only solution for sustainability is less. And so that is a contradiction, what it is. And I haven't solved that problem. I could tell people oh, this has recyclable material. That's not the solution. The solution is to consume less. Ride your bike more and consume less. How do I get other people to do it? I can't really. I could do it for myself. I personally try to live a very low carbon footprint, but I can't really tell people how to live because they don't want that for me to tell that what it is. I think what I have to do is understand what I put out there is a good product, and there are compromises. Design is pure compromise. My product, for instance, it's disposable packaging, but the packaging was well designed and worked within that. And anytime I had control of that, I tried to make those decisions and put it in there. I think people, I don't want to, well, I am cynical, and I think some people want to deal with sustainability issues outwardly, and some people don't want to be, and I don't really have control over that. So I approach it of what I can do, when I have control over it, I do. What I have no control over, it's not for me to knock on someone's door and say, hey, you need to do this or whatever. It's for me to control what I could do, and that's how I acknowledge that.
Do you think there's economic opportunity in consuming less or helping others to consume less?
Man, that's a great question. I think there's economic opportunity to design better products. I think there is. I think the biggest solution to all this is to consume less. So I think if you made better products, whatever that may mean for the time, because there's variables, sometimes you just need something right for the moment, and that's the better product. I think we should always design a better made product, and that includes sustainability issues in that. I don't necessarily see companies being that driving focus on that. I think when companies push that out there, it's somewhat green mail in that, or I'm questioning the authenticity of that. You're still selling. You still want people to consume. The solution is to consume less. I think what companies could do is make the product not so much recyclable, but to use better product, better materials to begin with, and to understand the energy consumption to get that product, not just in the manufacturing, but getting it into the marketplace. And designing it so it could be recycled again, if possible.
Well, Brett, thanks for being here today, taking the time to be a part of our series, and I'm really excited about seeing what's next with your creations. So
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us on our Change Agents Unite series.